Hello everyone, my name is Derpenschnoff, but you may call me D, and today we're going to talk about bases, tracing, and plagiarism. If you don't know, I'm going to an art college called Full Sail. I'm getting my degree in game art, and they taught me about plagiarism, obviously, and what's acceptable and not acceptable in the industry. And I very much trust what they say because a lot of my professors have actually worked at Disney. My current professor has animated in Lilo and Stitch, and Brother Bear, so he knows what he's doing. So let's start off with what are bases. You're gonna know what bases are, but we're gonna run down. They're usually like an outline of a character. Usually it's an anime style or in a cartoony animal style, and it's basically something for you to put clothes on and color on and for you to design that base. For example, a base may be made by one person and they'll look like the same animal but they'll have different colors type of thing, or they'll be the same pose but with different clothes. This is usually something used by younger artists, and it's something that I kind of did, but I'll explain that later. And then there's tracing. Tracing has a lot of bad mojo to it, but I'll talk about how tracing is fine later. It's usually when you take an image or drawing and you draw over it to take the pose or to take the character, and usually people don't copy it perfectly, but some people do. Usually it's just to get a pose or a face or something like that. And it can be both your own or others. It's just the bad mojo comes from people who trace other people's art, but it is possible to trace your own art, and sometimes that's okay and sometimes it's not. So plagiarism in the art world. Plagiarism is seen as stealing someone's wording or phrasing, their poetry or their artwork, and that's kind of part of it, but there's a whole big part of plagiarism that usually affects people more than stealing, such as not properly crediting someone. Even if you quote them, if you don't properly credit them in a paper, it's still plagiarism. Turning in work that you made previously for a new assignment, you can be plagiarizing yourself. You can plagiarize yourself. It's a thing, and it's a big problem because people don't know about it, and then that's how they get kicked out of college. Tracing your own artwork can sometimes be 100% acceptable for an assignment or a commission, and then other times it can get you kicked out of college tracing your own artwork. It's really circumstantial, and you have to talk to the people that you're giving the artwork. And then the big one is if you're collaborating with a friend on an assignment, or your friend says that you can use your work and you turn that in for an assignment where you weren't supposed to collaborate, that can also get you kicked out of college or flunk that class. It's, again, very circumstantial, and there's just a lot of rules to it. Now, what about bases and tracing? Are they plagiarizing? Are you plagiarizing yourself? Are you plagiarizing others? Is it wrong? Well, depends what you're doing. If you're tracing or you're using bases, you most likely cannot make any money off of them or turn them in for a commission or an assignment. Those are the big two no-nos. Sure, you're probably not going to get sued, or you're probably not going to get kicked out of high school if you trace something or use a base, but it's very frowned upon. You'll probably get a really bad grade because even in high school, you're not supposed to do that. And commission-wise, no one will want to commission you if it's not your own artwork. They want to commission someone who's doing it from scratch and they're getting their money's worth. And then directly selling a base that is not yours, or tracing something and then selling it as a print or something, very wrong. Don't do that. If you're using a doll maker, don't make money off of it because it's not good for anyone in that situation. It's very much plagiarism, and even if you're not going to get sued, even if the big company doesn't care, it's very frowned upon and it's going to hurt your image. The best way to use bases is to, again, just have fun. If you're having fun, you're properly crediting people, and you're being open about everything, you're not hiding anything, it should be fine. No one should be stopping you from that. Even with tracing, if you trace an image and in your posting or your video, you're like, hey, here's the original artist, I traced this is not 100% my artwork, that is respected. That is fine. I think a lot of people fail to realize that tracing and learning people's styles and copying people is actually not the worst thing in the world. It's actually quite common in the industry. If you're animating or your own artwork, a lot of time you're going to trace a lot. You're going to trace your own artwork, and because maybe you want a variation of it or you really like that pose, and as long as you're not directly selling it for commissions, it's fine. In an animation standpoint, you're going to have to trace other people's artwork because it's a big collaboration piece. And so tracing inherently isn't that big of a deal. As long as you're not trying to actively steal people's stuff, you're fine. When it comes to having fun, you shouldn't limit yourself. As long as it's for fun, it's fine. And especially if you're young, because anyone who says that you should be learning anatomy is fucking crazy if you're younger than 16. Because a lot of anatomy is learning how things attach in proportions. And if you're younger than probably 16, you yourself don't look like an adult. You have child proportions. For example, when you stand up in adult proportions, the tip of your fingers should be about halfway to your thighs. If you're 13, that is not true. If you're even younger than that, if you're 8, that is way not true. Your rib cage is a different size, your head is a different size than adult proportions. Your legs connect in a different way, your spine is different. The way your spine curves is different than an adult. The way you stand and everything, down to your face. The bones in your face aren't even the same as an adult. So anyone who says you should be working on anatomy when you're 8 can go fuck themselves. Now let's get to the moral of it, because a lot of people don't like it when people trace, or they don't like it when people use bases. And when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. As long as you're not hurting anyone, there's no reason to stop, especially if you're doing it for fun. Now, that doesn't mean you can't accept criticism. People can criticize you all they want, but people shouldn't be aggressive towards you and telling you that your artwork sucks and just attacking you on a personal level. It's not appropriate. And avoid drama whenever you can. For example, if someone is selling a base, technically they can do that. It's their own artwork. But also it's the case of they can't own a pose. So if you were to trace it, technically you'd probably be fine. But it's also the case of it's gonna be heavily frowned upon. You're gonna upset the person. There's so many other bases out there. Just don't do it. Use your brain. Is it gonna cause drama? Then don't do it. There's a difference between being creative and going against the grain and just being an asshole. And while we're talking about just general stuff, gotcha edits are okay. Everyone likes it. And it's a great way to learn how to shade and to use different colors and try out different line works. Now, when I was younger, I was kind of into art. I didn't really have any other outlets, but obviously I didn't know where to draw. I was 8-ish, so I would trace the images in my coloring books and then I would shade them, and that should be completely fine. It's probably the reason I'm pretty decent at shading now. It's a lot easier to focus on shading and coloring and all the detail work when you don't have to worry about proportions. And I think that's a great thing that gotcha editing is teaching. Yeah, those kids aren't the best at anatomy or doing their own poses, but when they finally learn how to do that, they're going to be leaps ahead of people who were struggling at anatomy because they were so young, because they're going to know how to shade really well and they're going to know how to do colors, and it's a great way to focus on that at a young age. And when it just comes down to it, people want to have fun and just let them have fun. Not everyone needs to be a Picasso. No one needs to be perfect. A lot of people who are doing art don't want to be professionals. If it happens, it happens. But a lot of them are doing it for fun. And to anyone who thinks that's wrong, to anyone who thinks that they need to constantly improve and that them doing bases is a sin against artwork, just a quick note. If you want to control someone's artwork, you better be fucking paying them.